2002, I bought my first RC51 Honda, and I was living up out of Redding, up in the mountains. And the bike did so many wonderful things that it rocked my world. And I thought, man, this is the most enjoyable bike I've ever had. I've had a lot of bikes over the years. Well, it was sure to get me tickets, and so I got rid of the bike because I didn't want to lose my driver's license. And so I came about picking up another RC51 really in good shape. And as I was looking at it on the hoist, I'm thinking to myself, I want to do something special because this is a special bike. I want to do something very special. And I go, you know what? You've got a special friend, your old buddy Peter Starr. And I thought to myself, okay. So I think I even contacted you. I said, I sent you some pictures of some concepts I had. I said, Peter, you're a legend. You're AMA Hall of Famer, and you're well known in the industry. And I thought to myself, I'm going to do something. Peter, I'm going to create your first signature bike. You remember that?
I do. I remember it clearly, and I'm going, Gary, you're nuts, but that's okay.
Well, so once I started looking at designs, and I go, no, no, and no. And so I go, okay. I said, Peter, send me some racing numbers, some of your racing numbers. You said 5, and somehow I got 26 because that was one of your racing numbers. And I go, send me your graphics, and now I've got your signature also on my tank. So the only thing to do now is to authenticate this thing as Peter Starr's signature bike. And so we've got a motorcycle, and we got a legendary film producer, and so you went out and looked at it today. We're going to get some pictures here tomorrow, but you went out and looked at it today, and what do you think?
Well, I've always been an RC51 fan. I always thought it was a great motorcycle. And of course its competition was the TL1000 Suzuki, and it came out at about the same time. And the Suzuki was renowned for its not so good handling, but a lot of power. And the Honda handled better and had more medium power. And to me, a motorcycle is a question of balance. You know, it's no good having all the horsepower if you can't use it. And the RC51, I think, is what they could use, the horsepower, and the bike and the chassis could handle it. So I was pretty pleased that you chose the RC51 generally. Although I do like the Suzuki. It's not a bad bike. It's just a really different kind of ride. But no, I was honored that you thought of me and to do that. And I looked at my signature that's on your tank today, and I'm going, crikey, that doesn't look so bad at all. You know,
Well, I used to come down here. We used to get together for coffee quite a bit, and I miss those days. And so I made this opportunity to come down this week to come down and do this with you. But there's people out there who are not familiar with Peter Starr, as many.
Really?
Yeah. Well, shoot far.
Just don't tell my sponsors that.
And I wanted to get Geico to get you and the Gecko to do something together. You both have these crazy little accents, and I could see where you guys, Geico, if you're paying attention, Peter Starr is the guy to go out with a Gecko, sell a lot of motorcycle insurance.
That would be a lot of fun, actually, because although my accent is very much north of London, the Gecko is actually a Cockney accent, basically a London accent. And I'm from Coventry, which is about 100 miles northwest of London. Different accent, different people, almost like a different nation at times. But I think it would be fun to do something like that and bring motorcycling to a different community through the Gecko, you know.
Geico, are you listening? So anyway, so now we've got the bike down here, and this is kind of like a dream for me because I wanted to do something because I love the RC51, everything about it, the sound, the feel. It's heavy, but it's solid. It's just a wonderful. The TL, I did entertain getting one of those, but they did have some handling problems. But my first really super bike that I really rocked my world was the RC51. So it's got you on it, big guy, and I'm pretty tickled that I'm able to bring this about and to get your stamp of approval.
Well, it's fun. I'm glad you did, and I'm glad you're down here to do this, and happy to do the little interview here. Hopefully it brings you some notoriety in the RC51 world. But what's interesting is my next guest on my podcast, the MotoStar podcast, is Wayne Gardner. And Wayne Gardner, of course, was world champion for Honda in 1987. And I'm not sure Wayne ever rode an RC51. I think the bikes he rode was, mainly GP bikes. He may have ridden one, I don't know. But it's certainly a good connection with Honda. And you know also that I made the films with Freddie Spencer back in the early 80s. And there could be no better, what's the word I'm trying to think of? It could be no better as a representative of Honda and Honda racing than Freddie Spencer. And so with my name on a Honda RC51 seems to make a lot of sense to me.
I think so. So that's it. I was excited to get this thing down here, let you see it, and it's been a labor of love. Honestly, it's been something. It just when I work on this thing, it's like I'm working on something with a pedigree. I'm not working on just any old motorcycle. I'm working on something that came out of the Honda Race Factory. So I think your status in the racing industry and the film industry and this motorcycle, they just go like a hand in glove. So what I'd like you to do is maybe tell the viewers where they can see your podcasts.
Well, all of my podcasts are available through our own YouTube channel. And to get there, you go to youtube.com/motostar, MOTOSTARR. The first 20 episodes are actually up on my website also, and that's motostar.com. We're up now to episode 32. My first 15 guests were all American world champions. I mean, Roberts, Lawson, Rainey, Kenny Roberts Jr., Freddie Spencer, Kevin Schwantz, Wayne Rainey already, but Brad Lackey, Bruce Penhall, Greg Hancock, major American heroes, American legends. We have another part of the series which I broadened out across the world, and we have Graham Crosby. We've got Wayne Gardner coming up this week. Matt Oxley, a very famous journalist, we did last week. We're building up a picture of motorcycling globally, but we kicked off with American legends. And there's only a couple more American legends that I really think are necessary that we're still working on, but everybody these days is so busy. Scheduling is the biggest single problem with podcasts. It absolutely is, and but I hope to get some more like David Bailey. I consider Roger DaCosta an American these days because he's been here for so long. Him, Jeremy McGrath, Bob Hanna, perhaps on the motocross side of things, and of course Colin Edwards, who is going to come on. Again, scheduling problem. Colin's very busy. I'm very busy. We just haven't made it there yet, but that's what we plan, and we plan to do these continually. I want to thank Dunlop. Dunlop is the only sponsor right now of MotorStar Podcasts, and they stepped up to bat and said, we like what you're doing, and we want to be part of it. So I want to thank Dunlop for doing that. We're looking for other sponsors, but they were the first ones to step up. We try to put one out about every 2 weeks. Usually it works out about one every 10 days. And so basically we're looking at maybe 30 during the year. And that's a pretty good track record for doing these kind of video podcasts, because it takes a lot of production to do that. Scheduling and the interview and then the editing and all that sort of stuff afterwards. But it's almost like a new thing, because what prompted me to do them, I saw all these people dying. And I started out a couple of years ago making videos of people that were, should we say, our senior citizens. Dick Mann, as an example. I interviewed Dick Mann several years ago now, after he got the first surgery for his throat cancer. Well, Dick passed away this year, so I bought that interview out and made a podcast of it. But we did Skip Van Leeuwen and Gary Bryson, Carol Rossweber, Don Brown. I mean, there's a list of perhaps a dozen people that have since passed on since we interviewed them. Joe Leonard, you might remember.
Yeah.
And eventually they'll get put up as podcasts, because the history of motorcycling is what is leaving us faster and faster every year. I mean, all of us are getting older, and me in particular, that I see the years go by. And I noticed that nobody has video on a lot of these people. So I started doing the actual collection of videos probably 5 years ago when I saw this happening with people. And as I said, they passed away, and Nixon and Joe Leonard and Carol Rossweber and Don Brown and Skip Van Leeuwen. I mean, these Gary Bryson. I mean, it's all of a sudden we don't have a history where people can tune in and say, oh, that was Gary Bryson, or that was Don Brown, or that, look at Gary Nixon, that's what he looked like. And he's, in his own words, this is his life. Sammy Tanner, who's still with us, who's 82 years old. I mean, I'm trying to get people on tape that will protect the history of the sport, and at the same time counter that with people, as I said, like Wayne Gardner, who was world champion in the 80s, and Freddie Spencer and Kenny Roberts, and even newer guys. I stretched out to the UK for a couple of young people, and it's to hopefully put a balanced factor together so the MotoStar can become the video podcast of record for motorcycling globally, as through the eyes of these various people.
Let me add something here, Peter. I was telling someone just recently, like, I think we're only like 10 or 11 months apart in age. I just well, I'm in my.
I'm 39 too. Eh?
I'm 30. No, I'm 37. 30. I was just telling someone the other day that the joy of getting older is when you've accomplished. You're sitting kind of like in the city gates with all the those who have accomplished in their life, and you've got stories to tell, and we live those stories, and what you just described, these are the people we cut our teeth on. We were in diapers maybe, and when these guys were racing that you've interviewed, and we remember them. And I go back to Cal Rayburn of all guys, and he was my favorite because I worked for Harley Davidson Motorcycles back in the 60s and 70s. So Cal Rayburn was my favorite guy. I saw him race at Ontario, at the old Ontario track. Amazing rider. And then the Texas
Mark Brailsford.
Mark Brailsford, yeah, and now the RC51, the Texas Tornado, and but all these guys that you just described and mentioned are people of our past, and there's a lot of older motorcycle riders out there that need to be looking at your podcast and going back and reminiscing and remembering when.
Well, I think it's important, and certainly as we get older, and I'm one of those. I mean, my racing goes back to the 60s, and in fact, you mentioned my racing numbers. When I was racing in Europe on international events, I was number 5. When I raced domestically in the UK, usually 26 was the number I got. And you got 26 on your bike, so you've covered at least that part of the thing. But when I raced like the Barcelona 24 hours and the Monza 6 hours and races like that, we got number 5. And that was, it kept there. In those days, when we came from abroad, they asked us what number we would like, and that's the number we got. And I kept that through that period. But in the UK, it changed week by week, depending really what the racetrack was and whether it was a national race or a club race or an invitation race. They give you a number. But 26 is okay. 5 would have been better. but that's pretty good. I wanted to clear up that number thing.
I'll put a number 5 on my helmet. I will have everybody confused. Like, well, blame it on Peter Starr, not me.
There was Matt Oxley just wrote a really good article in Road Racing World about Ginger Malloy. And Ginger Malloy was a racer in my era, in my day, and he was a privateer that came from New Zealand and raced all over Europe, and they literally lived out of the back of a Ford Thames van. I mean, it was very, very crude in those days. We lived out of the back of a Bedford Dormobile. I mean, there was no motorhomes. There were no motorhomes. There was no sort of hospitality suites, and there's no chef to cook you food. A Primus stove and a saucepan, and tea bags and stuff like that.
That's when men were men.
Well, I've heard that before, but it was a different era, and. If people want to look at that, go to Road Racing World and read the article that Matt Oxley wrote about Ginger Malloy, and you'll get a real taste of what the Continental Circus was like in the 60s.
Well, I think before I wrap this up, Pete, is there anything you want to mention, or like maybe some of your future endeavors, if you what's going on in the mind of Peter Starr?
I don't like to mention things that may not happen. So I'll only say one thing. In 2022, I'll be 80 years old, and I'm planning an 11,000-mile ride throughout America to put across the essence of that. No matter how old you're getting chronologically, the day you give up your passion and say I'm done is the day you start to die. And I think it's incredibly important to keep going, doing what you're passionate. I mean, your health may deteriorate, but your mind doesn't or shouldn't. But if you give up and give up and give up, like so many people do, that's when the body says, okay, it's time to check out. And I don't want to be in that point for a long time. So we're going to do this 80th anniversary Crisscross America, starting the 28th of September in San Diego and ending up in San Diego 11,000 miles later, and on my birthday.
I don't know. Maybe some people would like to join you along the road and ride a little bit with you.
Well, we'll have a website called crisscrossamerica.com pretty soon, and we're working on all the details now. We're looking at sponsors and so on. We're building and building. I'm building a team to make this happen, and we will have celebrities riding with us. We'll have days when the general public can ride with us. It'll be a charity run, so we'll be raising money for a motorcycle charity yet to be decided. Just stay tuned. Look for crisscrossamerica.com in the near future.
That's very interesting. I'm going to come up with some shirts. It's going to be maybe I put 80. I was going to say 70, but we can do 8. Say old farts don't drool, they rule. An old fart coming near you to the local coffee shop.
You can do that if you like. I like to say, keep the dream alive. The minute you let the dream die, you start to go down as well. Keep the dream alive. When I went to Taiwan, I rode with the Grand Riders in Taiwan. That's in my book, Motorcycle Traveler. These were guys, the average age was 82. The oldest was in his 90s. And we rode around Taiwan. And the experience of riding with these old guys was truly awe-inspiring, and it was a spiritual experience, the like of which is really hard to describe, because you get there, you're in it. I got to present prizes to them. I rode with them through a translator. I talked to them because I don't speak Chinese. They didn't speak English. And these are old guys. But it was such an uplifting experience that if I could do the same for Americans here by riding around America and inviting them to join me, that would be my interpretation of what the Grand Riders of Taiwan did.
Well, I think I would like to get out and go a piece with you. That could be a lot of fun. Well, I did have another thought, but listening to you, the thought went in and out. It just escaped me. So, well, that's it on this end. I'm glad that I could finally get the Peter Starr signature bike done and down to you. Now it's just a matter of authenticating it.
Gary, it's been a pleasure having you here, and I'm glad you got a chance to do this interview, and I hope you get to some public with it and get some people out there to listen.
Absolutely. Bye, everyone. From Peter Starr and Gary Whiting, we say keep the rubber side down. Or what else?
As you go through life, make this your goal. Watch the donut, not the hole.
Bye.